Welcome to the England Rugby Pod. Thanks for downloading episode 123. With the Premiership season showing no signs of cooling down, we take a look at the upcoming games and we pick Wood's one to watch this weekend. You're listening to the England Rugby Pod, the rugby podcast that believes England will win the World Cup in 2019. Hey guys, welcome back. Probably a short and sweet one this week. We've got a few things to go over, what's going on in the Premiership, a few other bits, and a few of you have reached out to ask some questions and make some comments, so we'll go through that. But of course, before any of it, I'm going to introduce you to my co-host, as always. Dan, how are you, mate?
Oh, I'm very good, mate. How are you?
I'm very well. Very well. It's been busy. People don't know this, but I work in the travel industry, so it's all gearing up for summer. So things are pretty busy at the moment.
Wow, awesome!
Yeah, it's pretty exciting.
Yeah, good.
I should really make my business a sponsor of this show, but that's not what we're about. So
yeah, exactly. We want to keep it real.
Exactly. So I think I'll start with these comments that have come through. We'll go through those, and then we can move on to what's going on in the Premiership and anything else that you want to discuss. So the First thing, a little question. Here we go. This is a nice way to start off. This is from Toby Oliver. He sent this on Twitter and he says, question for the pod. Why is it in the European rugby competitions the players don't have their names on their shirts?
I have no idea. I suspect about, I know with European there's something about they dictate I think the European rugby dictate which shirts are going to be worn. So I think it may just be a logistical nightmare to do that.
I mean, if we're going to think about this from we don't know the answer, we're going to try and come up with a good one. I suppose if you're comparing, a lot of people ask the question, why do rugby players not have their names on their shirts where footballers do? I think one of the big things is that in rugby, the number represents the position. And I know that people move around, but obviously in football, you've got, people with... I mean, generally speaking, there's a bit of a rule. There used to be a kind of a rule, but it doesn't really exist anymore in the same way. Whereas in rugby, if you're wearing number 15, you are the fullback. If you're wearing number 10, you are the fly half. You might change positions during the game, but at the start, that's the way it's going to work. So I suppose there's an element of it's less important to know the name, although that's starting to change.
Well, I also really hope we don't go down that football route where you suddenly got, someone wearing 27 or something because that's their squad number. The honest answer is we don't know, but we are happy to wildly speculate.
Wildly speculate and claim that we are absolutely correct in our speculation.
The European thing, I think, is correct, though. I'm sticking by that.
What your reasoning for? Well, I mean, that was his question. So, do you feel like you've answered it?
I feel like I have. I feel like I bossed that one.
You've bossed it. Fair enough. Another positive. This is from Tom Fussell, who has reached out to us in the past, and you'll like this one, Dan. He says, "Fellas, I'll be touring with a club in my area in early May, and I'll be flying into and out of London. Not really sure where Rugby HQ is located. I think he means ours as opposed to Twickenham. But I'd be really interested in grabbing a beer with you if the opportunity is there."
The opportunity is there, Tom.
Where Dan is concerned, the opportunity will always be there.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely, mate.
Just don't bank on more than 2 or 3, otherwise you're carrying Dan home.
I'm going on the tour, mate. Tom, drop us an email with the details. Obviously, we can't guarantee because we don't know exactly when it is and things. But no, if we're about, we'd love to.
Cool. And then this one, slightly more somber note, but I thought I'll read it out because we're here to discuss everything that people have to say. And this is, I think, this is in response to your passionate. I don't know what the right word is, but your passionate display in our last episode regarding Maggie Alfonsi.
Yeah.
And this is from Stewie on YouTube. Believe it or not, we actually get people listening to us on YouTube. They basically sit there and watch a blank screen and just listen to us. But
awesome.
We'll take our listeners wherever we can get them. And Stewie says, "This is all well and good, and no offence, but why does Maggie Alfonsi have to always commentate on the Wales games on ITV? Can she not commentate on England's games? Also, can you imagine the uproar if England were playing and they were cutting to non-Evans all the time? You English would go fucking mental. And now for a view from pitchside, Wales' most capped female rugby player, non-Evans. So this is the reason I wanted to read it out.
I don't think this covers what I got annoyed about.
Well, you got annoyed about people saying that
women have no place in rugby.
Women have no place in rugby, and obviously those comments came off the back of Maggie Alfonsi being a commentator.
So Maggie Alfonsi was on. No, the comments came from Maggie Alfonsi on Brian Moore's podcast, and she was asked a direct question. It's not like she's sort of, it's not like she's giving a gripe or anything. And actually, I disagree. I like Maggie Alfonsi as a commentator.
So, like I say, I'm not suggesting that he is correct or that I'm digging myself a hole here. There's no reason to be digging a hole. I guess his point is, do we want, as fans, to see like for like? So do we want the guys who have been in the shirt commentating on the game in question?
No, bullshit. No. If you're a rugby expert, you're a rugby expert. Yeah, you might want some more recent ones. Like, it's good having Sam Warburton because he was close to the current Wales squad. But if you've got John O'Dare or Delalio or even Johnny, they don't know this England team. They haven't played for a while. But I still want them there because they're still, they're knowledgeable about rugby. And fair enough, they've probably got a closer affiliation. But I think the women's game is professional now. No, I don't think so at all.
That's fair enough. Stewie, there you go. There's the response from a passionate advocate for women's rugby, and rightly so, in our own Mr. Wood.
Stewie, fair enough. Absolutely entitled to your opinion. I'm not having to go at you, mate.
I guess if we want to kind of give him the benefit of the doubt, he's not questioning the gender of the person. He's saying Maggie Alfonsi commentating on the Wales games when it's Wales against somebody else as an ex-England star. Why not have regardless of gender? Why not have female? Why not have Welsh commentators commentating on Welsh games? And have English commentators commentating on English games, but then I suppose that doesn't. There's plenty of that going on anyway. That shouldn't really matter.
I haven't really noticed it. But I think they do tend to match up, like the nationality. I mean, I must admit, I hadn't noticed with Maggie Alfonsi things. So if that happens, I don't know why. But yeah, I agree.
She's just an ITV pundit.
Yeah.
Bottom line, isn't she? And since ITV have got the England games as well, haven't they? No, yeah, England games were.
Oh yeah, I prefer them on BBC. I must admit.
The England games. The England games are ITV, aren't they?
They were all ITV. Yeah. I prefer the BBC, but I do love the fact that Johnny's on ITV. So
So you just want Johnny to move to BBC, and then
then we're done.
Happy days.
Then we're done.
Okay, well there we go. We've had it. So yeah, a few comments. No new reviews this week, but it's always good to hear what you guys have to think, whether we agree or not. It doesn't matter. It's good to be able to discuss these things. So keep those comments coming. Emails at englandrugbypod. Emails englandrugbypod@gmail.com. Social media at englandrugbypod, and let us know your thoughts. Dan, this week. Well, let's look at last week first of all. We talked obviously in our last episode about the kind of the games that were coming up and the big ones, the ones to watch. I think Wood's one to watch this weekend. Last week was which one was it? It was Wasps Worcester. That was right, because you said that if Wasps were to, cock up, then that it puts them in a very difficult position. They didn't. It was a pretty convincing. Well, it was a decent result, 28-16. I think probably what was expected.
Yeah, I think so. And what's interesting now is Wasps are now in a shout for the playoffs. They're only 7 points behind Quins. I mean, this table is so tight.
It is. I mean, the upset, if you like, of the weekend, and I call it an upset. It's not. That's completely the wrong word because the two teams are in fourth and fifth. But Quins losing to Sale.
I would have backed Quins, I must admit.
That closed the gap significantly. So it's now Quins are now 49 points, Sale on 44. In a sort of, well, in fact, Quins, Sale and Bath are now both on 44 because Bath beat Bristol. Quins on 49. So that's a very close. That's a very small gap. looking for fourth spot. Northampton aren't that far behind on 42. Wasps also on 42. So really, you can go all the way down to 8th. Fourth to 8th are massively in contention for that fourth, probably 3rd to 8th. But yeah, 4th to 8th.
I think Gloucester are probably safe now.
Yeah, I mean, they're 6 points up on Quins.
And they're 11 points up on Sale, which is realistically, I think they're safe for a playoff place.
Yeah, you're probably right. So top 3 are probably already confirmed. But yeah, that 4th spot is wide open.
Yeah, that is weird, isn't it? That 1 to 8 are all going for playoffs. Fair enough, Exeter and Saracens have got it, and then 9 to 12 are all fighting relegation. This is why I don't want it ring fenced.
But ironically, last week we were talking about the fact that Wasps were in contention to be in the playoff to fighting not to go down. So it's I don't know. It's weird, isn't it? I feel like there's not enough teams to have the middle of the table section. But maybe that's a good thing. Maybe that makes the game more exciting. You're either fighting for a top 4 spot or you're fighting to stay in the Premiership.
Yeah, exactly. I think the Premiership is so exciting at the moment. I think Bristol getting the point at Bath, wasn't it? Them getting the losing bonus point.
Bath got the points in.
Yeah, but Bristol got a losing bonus point.
Oh, I see what you mean, yes.
And I think that's huge. That now puts an 8-point gap, which is, of course, is achievable. But I think Bristol... I think they had a hell of a result that weekend. Leicester, I think it's between the bottom 3. I mean, yeah, of course, Bristol are still in it, but I realistically think it's between Leicester, Worcester and Newcastle.
Well, Leicester, obviously, let's first say, first of all, apart from the Quins game, I think all the games, the result came in as we would have expected. Bath beat Bristol, Saracens beat Newcastle, Wasps beat Worcester, Exeter beat Leicester, Gloucester beat Northampton. And then obviously the Sale Quins game was always going to be, it could go either way. They were both 4th and 5th fighting for the top spot. So it pretty much panned out as you'd expect. But Exeter 52, Leicester 20. I mean, it was a dicking.
Exeter are...
Are Exeter just that good at the moment that they just dick everybody?
Exeter are awesome, but Leicester just can't live off past glories anymore. It's getting a bit tedious, people saying... They're such a strong team historically. They're a stalwart of English rugby. They're not right now. Leicester have got some problems, and this weekend, my God, they could. This I think could determine their future.
100%. Well, and the reason, of course, is that it's Newcastle against Leicester at Newcastle. Newcastle currently in 12th. Leicester currently in 10th. I mean, this is huge, isn't it?
Yeah, mate. This is the game of the season. This is absolutely
match
massive. It's just because if Newcastle beats Leicester, especially if they beat them with a bonus point, Leicester don't get any points. Then, I mean, depending on the Worcester result, imagine Newcastle and Worcester win. Leicester could be bottom of the table this weekend.
Well, okay, for that to happen, though, Worcester have to beat Sale, who are pushing for 4th, while Worcester are struggling down in 11th.
Worcester either need to beat Sale or get 2 bonus points.
Which, let's be honest, they're not going to do.
No, yeah.
I actually think Leicester are going to beat Newcastle. And ironically, we're saying that one result could see Leicester at the bottom of the table and potentially a season position, a relegation decision kind of right there on the cards. On the flip side, Bristol are not going to beat Saracens. Probably.
No, where is it? No, they won't. Is it at Bristol, though, isn't it?
It is at Bristol, but I don't think that's going to make a difference. And I'd actually go so far as to say I think Saracens might ruin them, but we'll see. But Bristol are going to lose to Saracens in my predictions. And then if Leicester beat Newcastle, Leicester actually go ahead of Bristol.
Yeah, of course.
So there's a lot of kind of swings and roundabouts going on. I think Leicester are actually going to be 9th after this weekend.
I think Newcastle might beat them. But looking at that Leicester team, when I looked at the Leicester backline, where you have like George Ford, Kyle Eastman, Manu, Johnny May, Tamura, fair enough, he was playing fullback out of position. But the quality of those players, I just can't believe what's going on there. But don't forget Leicester also. Where Leicester might be in trouble is they've lost both the Youngs brothers,
yes,
who are huge for them.
Yeah, that is big. But George Ford is playing phenomenally well at the moment.
He is, yeah.
I mean, I know it's one of those games, isn't it, where you kind of just can't see them losing, and yet everything that's happened over the past few months suggests that there's every possibility that they'll lose. But then you can't. You've got to look at the fact that Newcastle are sitting bottom of the table, so they also have been very poor. It's not like they're Newcastle is a team. I don't know. It's all well and good to say Leicester shouldn't be there, therefore they'll probably lose. There's a good chance they're going to lose because they're just playing so badly at the moment when they're clearly playing a little bit better than Newcastle.
Yeah, it's because if you look at it, the bottom four, Bristol, Leicester, Worcester and Newcastle all have 6 wins and 12 losses. It's just about bonus points, which, that's the point of the system. Yeah, Newcastle are bottom of the table. I could see it. I can't call it. It's at Newcastle, so I think if I had to, if I had to put my car on it, I think I'd go Newcastle. But I just can't call it, just because Leicester's defence at the weekend was so shockingly bad at times that it was actually a little embarrassing. But I mean, I assume they're going to try, they're going to work their ass off to sort that out. But if they don't, I can't see them winning because they'll just leak tries.
Yeah, possibly. I mean, what do we then say about Newcastle and why they're sitting dead last?
Yeah, Newcastle have been bad. Newcastle haven't been great this season. They've been bad, but it tends to be tighter games. Hey, look, they're both having shocking seasons. Newcastle made the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
And they could well be a championship team next year. So they're both having shocking seasons. And obviously the reason, like we said last time, the reason we're going through all this is the impact from the England players and how does that affect, the World Cup guys, or take it from that point of view. But it's really interesting anyway, just from a sort of English rugby perspective. So you're going Leicester to beat Newcastle?
Yeah, I think I am. I think this could be the deadlock weekend, and I think Leicester. They had Exeter sitting very comfortably top of the table last weekend. It was almost a foregone conclusion what the result was going to be. Maybe not necessarily expecting to be quite such a big scoreline, but. This weekend, I think it's different. I think I'm going Leicester. I think Leicester will do it, and I think that we'll go from saying they're on the verge of being bottom of the table to then going, well, now they're in 9th, and sitting pretty close to what would the dead middle be, 6th and 7th, so 2 away from being in dead middle of the table. So I think Leicester will win this weekend. But let's go through the games. Newcastle-Leicester, obviously, it's the big one. Would you say it's Woods' one to watch this weekend?
Newcastle-Leicester for sure.
Yeah. Gloucester-Bath at Gloucester.
That'll be a great one because that's a massive rivalry as well. And actually, that's a huge one as well because Bath will be fighting for, obviously, a playoff place.
It's massive. It's massive. If Bath beat Gloucester, which is certainly doable despite the 11-point difference, and Northampton beat Quins, which again, maybe
it's doable. Northampton have been playing well.
Yeah. So if Bath beat Gloucester and Northampton beat Quins, there's about a point between 4th to 7th.
And I believe Bath have Quins in their running as well.
I haven't gone that far ahead. I've just looked towards, so you might well be right. But yeah, it's going to be an interesting end to the season at both ends of the table. But anyway, yeah, so Gloucester-Bath, who are we going for? I think probably Gloucester.
I think so. I think in Gloucester, with the shed behind them, yeah, I think Gloucester will get that. Gloucester have got quite a few injuries, though. They lost a few, it took their toll playing against Northampton, so that'll be an interesting one. But yeah, I think I'm sticking with Gloucester for that.
You then got Worcester-Sale.
I am going Sale.
Yeah, I don't think Worcester.
Although Yeah, Sale, because they do have a lot to play for. Worcester, Worcester have pulled off some great results. I think it'll be close. I think it'll be very close, though.
Quins Northampton. I mean,
Quins have lost their last 3, I believe. Quins need to win.
And Danny Kerr needs a massive game because, of course, with Ben Youngs injured and I believe it's still unknown how long.
No, they took the decision to do the surgery now, so he should be back in time for World Cup training camp.
Right, okay. But he's going to miss out on the rest of the season, which is significant.
It is, but is that also a good thing for England?
Maybe, give him the rest, but in terms of Eddie Jones wanting someone who's coming off some decent form, you would think this is Danny Kerr's opportunity to put himself right back in contention, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would have thought so, because then Dan Robson could just run on water for him instead of doing it for Ben Youngs instead.
Well, do we know that Dan Robson's going to be back? Because of course he's.
Oh, of course he's injured. I think Dan Robson. Yeah, of course. I
think he might be ruled out because of is it bone marrow deficiency or something? It was something.
It was a horrible one. Yeah, it was. Yeah, I'm not sure where he is, but
I think when the media announce they have no idea what the long-term impacts are going to be, you know it's serious, because if they had even the slightest inkling that he might be okay, they would spin it in as positive a way as possible, I would expect.
If they don't give a time frame, it means it's going to be a long time.
So I think Dan Robson is probably out of contention, which is worrying for England, because if Danny Kerr is selected and ends up being our starting 9 because of injuries and things, we've effectively got our third choice scrum half starting for a World Cup.
Is he our third choice, though? I'm not
on paper.
Yeah.
Well, I say on paper. On Eddie Jones's piece of paper, I believe he's third choice.
Yeah, quite possibly. But you've also got Wigglesworth, of course, and is it Spencer as well at Saracens?
Well, Spencer is currently because if you remember, Spencer was called up when Dan Robson got injured as his cover, and they said at the time, because Danny Kerr and Wigglesworth were unavailable through injury, Spencer was called up. So Spencer is obviously being looked at as quite far down the pecking order.
Yeah. Do you think Danny Kerr was dropped because he's got the same initials as Danny Cipriani?
And he got maybe it was confusion. Maybe he just said DC.
Yeah, I don't want
DC anywhere near this team.
Get DC the fuck out of my sight.
And the others just maybe.
And then we got there. He's like, "Where's that short guy?
Yeah, where's Daniel?
Where's Ben Youngs too?" That's so harsh. Danny Kerr's an awesome player. I love Danny Kerr.
The second most capped scrum half ever.
After Ben Youngs.
Yeah. So, yeah, probably deserves a little more respect. But anyway, we're not giving it, clearly. Worcester Sale, we're going to Sale. Quins Northampton, no, we got that. Sorry, that was the one. Quins Northampton. What do you think?
I think Quins need a big game.
It's at home.
Been great. I'm going to go Quins.
I think I agree. So that's what I've gone. Then you've got Bristol Saracens. That's Sarries. I'm giving Sarries 5 points. I think they'll bonus point it. Even though you're saying that it's at Bristol and Bristol have got big performances in them, I just think that now as the end of the season draws near, Sarries and Exeter are just too strong.
I think so. I wonder if Sarries will start resting players. It doesn't seem to matter. I wonder if they'll give young Tommy Farrell a run out.
Maybe a little early, but yeah, we shall see. And then Exeter against Wasps, it's Exeter for the win. And I'm going bonus point.
Yeah, Exeter are immense at the moment. And did you see how well Don Armand's playing?
Obviously.
It's apparently irrelevant, but he is epic at the moment.
We did have a tweet. It wasn't actually directed. Well, it was sent to us. It was sent to us by. It's sent to us, the Rugby podcast, and the Rugby Pod. So this person, the Sergeant Major, as he's known on Twitter, believes that.
Thank you for your service, sir.
That we. What are they? That is us, obviously. I think that's Egg Chasers.
No, the Rugby Pod, I believe. Is that not Goody and
yeah. The Rugby Pod is Goody, and then Rugby Podcast at Rugby Podcast is Egg
that's
Chasers.
Egg Chasers. Yeah, I
So
believe
the three of us have been muddled in, which is always nice to hear. We've clearly been promoted.
Why the hell are we in that?
I don't know. Maybe it was that. Maybe he meant to write England Rugby, and it just auto-filled to England Rugby Pod. But we'll take it anyway. He says Slade and JJ both man of the match performances today. Who does Eddie Jones pick for the World Cup? I think he takes both.
Yeah, I think you take both. JJ's looking good. I think Slade is the current holder of the shirt.
Because he's got it, and therefore it's up to someone else to do more to take it away from him. And when one of those two is man. No,
I think because he deserves it on performances.
There you go.
That's
Major.
Why.
Short and sweet, that answer.
Yeah, I think Slade at the moment would be my number 13.
Fair enough. Okay, so final thing on the Premiership for this weekend then. So my predictions are seeing the only change in the table is Bristol and Leicester swapping places.
Oh, I don't think that will happen.
I mean, that's based on the predictions that we've just made for the results.
I think Bristol will lose, but sneak a bonus point because I think Saracens will put out a weak team. But I still think they'll win. But I think Bristol will
lose by less than 7.
Either that, or they'll get 4 tries because it'll be a loose game. But I think they'll get a bonus point, and I don't think Leicester will win.
You don't think Leicester will win? Oh, okay.
No. I'm sticking with Newcastle.
Oh, fair enough. So, well, anyway, I mean, it's good that we have a different opinion on that game because it is Wood's one to watch this weekend.
It certainly is, yeah. That one will be a good game. That's one to watch. And for Leicester, this is huge. It's really interesting. Is this good for England?
How close the Premiership is?
How close the Premiership is? How many potential England players are, having to fight relegation? But is this level of competition? Is this level of intensity? Does part of that make it a good thing?
Yeah, I mean, I was going to say, is this not a great rehearsal for knockout rugby, where every game potentially knocks you out of the Premiership?
It's great rehearsal if it doesn't exhaust you.
I don't know. I'm not a fan of the whole. They're playing too hard. They need to save it. How do you bring more to a game if the most you've ever brought before is? Do you know what I mean? Like if you play a certain intensity throughout the season, how can you be expected to bring more for a World Cup without knowing what more looks like?
Yeah, it's a tough one. But then if you look at the way Exeter are playing, if people are playing with that level of confidence and that level of skill, which maybe they don't need the same intensity as perhaps is going to happen at Newcastle Leicester this weekend.
I just think we're far enough out. I mean, obviously injuries aside, because that's a whole other thing. I don't know if that's what you're getting at, but obviously we don't want to risk injuries. But assuming that not assuming, but if injuries aside, I think the intensity is a good thing. I don't see that an intense last 2 games of this season are going to have a dramatic impact on how the guys play in what are we now? It'll be May, June, July, August, September, October, 6 months' time.
Yeah,
it's half a year before the World Cup. And I know there's training camps and things in between, and there's the Barwars game and there's various other things, but we're currently 6 months out, more than 6 months out from the World Cup. I don't think we need to be thinking about resting people now with a view to that World Cup in half a year's time.
Yeah, I know what you mean. It's not about resting. I think I'm looking at it more from an emotional toll perspective.
I hear what you're saying. I don't think you can under-prepare, though, for the emotional toll that 80 minutes of rugby, needing a W to not fly home is going to have. Like, you need to have been in a situation where it doesn't matter how pretty it is, you just got to win.
Train hard, fight easy.
And that's going to be the case for Leicester, the way things are going. You know, they're going to be fighting to the last minute. So I think given that there's so many England players involved in that, I think it's great for them to be put in this position where they have to, you know, and obviously this is all caveated by the fact that this is assuming they do survive the Premiership. I think they come away from that survival, you know, with a really good experience of what it's like to have to just do whatever it takes, which I think would be valuable for the World Cup. Obviously, if the worst was to happen, then that's a whole nother, it's a whole nother story and a whole nother discussion.
Yeah, but it's but I'll tell you what, like, so just looking at it as a whole, Premiership rugby at the moment is awesome. It's so like interesting, it's so exciting. Every match matters. You can't ring fence it. Please don't ring fence it. The powers that be. It would take away so much. Like, we're talking about these games this weekend from sort of an England perspective, but also just from a massive rugby fan perspective. We would not be having these conversations at all if it was ring fence. It'd just be like, oh yeah, well, bottom are playing third from bottom. Let's ignore that match. Let's just see. Yeah, I think it takes away so much and takes away a lot from sport. But no, you can't ring fence it in my mind.
And you know, it's Irish who are likely coming up. Yeah.
Yeah.
And London Irish have long been members of the Premiership. Should they not be given the
absolutely
opportunity to come back in?
I think if you'd ring fence it, they may well add another team or so.
Well, obviously, looking at the Premiership, you've obviously got London Irish, but then after that, I don't think any that have really been Richmond, Hartpury, Scottish, Coventry, Doncaster, Nottingham, Carnegie, Pirates, Bedford Blues, Jersey Reds, Ealing are the other teams in the Championship. So yeah, London Irish is it's. I mean, I guess the issue is there is that one team, but does that make it exciting? So it's always pretty much the same team that wins the Championship, and the same, and then one of, you know, and then someone goes down, and the one that goes down wins the Championship the following season, except where Bristol were concerned a few years back.
That was so those when the Championship playoffs were immense. I understand, but you can't. It wasn't really sustainable because if there's a playoffs, the team going up can't build for the Premiership. So it was a sort of, it wasn't right. It wasn't working, and I think they were right to stop them. But you're right. The Championship. That's a wider issue, I think, because the Championship at the moment, I mean, half those teams couldn't come up. Like, they wouldn't have the facilities, wouldn't have the money. But, you know, there are teams there that can do that. I think Ealing were in a position where they could. Yorkshire Carnegie sort of could if they were in it. Irish obviously can. So it's, and also just from the Premiership survival perspective, I mean, could you imagine if Leicester went down?
I mean, so you asked me the question about do I think it's a worry, you know, and a concern for the World Cup from an England perspective. What are your thoughts on that?
I am worried that there might be, the longer Leicester are fighting this relegation battle, I am worried that there's going to be a mental drain. Yes, they've got time, but I hope they're dealt with. If it just goes from, you know, say they survive on the last day, for argument's sake, but they're just absolutely exhausted, had a shit season, they're not feeling great. Yeah, they're happy they've survived, but they're not feeling great about their position. Then it's straight into England camp. I hope they give them the time they need to get that out their system. So yeah, to me, it is a slight concern.
Yeah, I actually think though that England camp gives them an opportunity to put the poor performances behind them and go, right, I'm going to, now it's a chance to refocus with the guys that I know are, you know, the elite in England, and I've been selected as one of them. I think you come at it from a different perspective mentally.
It depends, but if they went down, they're also
like I said before, that's a whole other.
Where they're shitting hell of me and my family going to be living next year, you know.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, does that therefore, from an England perspective, is that not an argument for ring fencing?
So yes, in theory, but it can't just be about that. I mean, it needs to be. There needs to be. I think if you ring fence, so you lose throughout the season, you lose maybe a level of intensity that we were chatting about earlier.
I agree. I'm not for ring fencing. I'm posing the questions. I like the fact that you can have situations like this where, red brick teams, if you like, are in threat, under threat, and I like the fact that it creates the intensity that it's creating for the England players. I actually think it's a positive rather than a worry. I think it's going to bring more out of them, certainly in an England shirt, and hopefully, because we don't want to see Leicester go down, but hopefully it brings more out of them in their Leicester shirt in their final 4 games.
It's and I think rugby at the moment is like your girlfriend from uni, freaking crazy. It's just everything that's going on. Like this Premiership, Leicester potentially going down, Falau being an absolute bell end. It's the 10-year anniversary of like the Bloodgate. We've got Sale Sharks props who are having more white powder than a baker. What else? There was something else going on. But Shabal singing "I Would Walk 500 Miles" dressed as a caveman. I still don't get that. I've nothing against it.
No one gets it.
But I was just
he's retired, right?
Yeah, I'm like, what the hell is this wackadoo doing, man? Like, does anyone know he's doing this? Is this all right?
I quite like it.
I quite liked it.
It reminded me of watching like a university varsity game or something.
Yeah, it was.
That was Tim the Bomb.
Yeah, exactly like Tim the Bomb, except
with clothes
Shabal's thinner
and wearing clothes
and more hair. But then, in fairness, a newborn baby has more hair than Tim the Bomb. So
this is true. Moving on.
Yeah, I hope he listens.
Probably not.
So yeah, rugby at the moment is just going a bit weird, but there's excitement with that as well. Like it's not all bad. There has been some negative press from rugby, but when something's this exciting, this must be good for the sport to grow it as well, right? Like surely if people who perhaps fringe rugby players, if they hear what's going on, then they're like, oh, one of the top teams, it'd be like, we're not particularly I mean, I quite like football, but say you're not a massive football fan, but if you heard that Man U might be getting relegated, I think you're paying a bit more attention.
Yeah, no, you're right. So yeah, if it gives more exposure to the game, I think that's a good thing. I mean, it's a World Cup year, so I think it's going to have a massive boost anyway. It always does. Brings the non-rugby fans out of the woodwork, and they all start pitching in with their opinions that they clearly don't know what they're talking about. But it's a free world, free speech, and all that. Although interestingly, what is the impact of that? You look at Falau and what's going on over there. And what are your thoughts on? There's obviously been talk, and they've been very careful about the wording, that the Australian RFU are discussing his. They haven't sacked him. They're discussing what to do, and I have no doubt that the most important factor in that is there's a World Cup looming. I mean, he's just scored. He's the record try scorer. I think he's just scored his 60th try, and he's done it in 6 seasons, I think it is, or 5 seasons. And I think the previous record of 59 took 11 seasons.
He's a great player. I need to be a bit careful here because my missus actually said to me in the week, she's like, if you talk about that, be careful because you have a propensity to exaggerate the situation. I was like, I was so surprised, mate. I almost tripped over my cock. Do you like that one? But looking at it, look, to me, Falau has the right to believe whatever he believes, I think. But what was the point of it? It was just stupid. It was absolutely. I mean, I personally find it vile. But ignoring that, I also want to be careful that I'm not trying to sit here on my high horse like all the time.
No. People are entitled to their opinions. That is, that's part of the world we live in, and you can't argue with that. You can argue with their opinion. I think if you choose to publicly share your opinion, you should have the expectation that those that disagree with you have every right to tell you that they disagree with you. the question is, how does this, or how should this impact his career?
Oh, he should be kicked out. I believe he should be. So here's the thing: if he believes that, what was the point in it? If he's genuinely saying, I think Jesus is Savior, doing that, you can word it so differently. You can say, "This is what I believe, and this is how I think you can be saved. Please feel free to get in contact, and I can do it." Not just spew.
Well, he
vile.
he just he tried to hide homosexuality as in amongst crime, basically, and then said that all these people were going to go to hell and that Jesus could save them, or something along those lines. I can't remember the exact wording. And 100%. And it was, I agree with you. I think the Australian, apart from anything else, a year ago, when this happened they sat him down and they said, you have a responsibility as a member of the Australian rugby team to kind of hold your tongue a little bit. Like, you're entitled to your opinions, but you're in a position of huge exposure, and that's not for your own agenda. Therefore, and they tried to put a kind of, I don't know what the word was they used, but they tried to sort of hold him back in terms of how much he was using social media.
Yeah,
so I would argue that
restriction.
I would argue that it's not about your personal opinion. Your job said you're not allowed to do X, and you did it anyway. And on that basis, you completely ignored your bosses, and you went ahead and did something they told you not to do. So on that basis, they should sack him. Will they?
I don't know. He's such a good player. There's a headline saying he may never play rugby again. I think that probably is too harsh. I think this has to be his last chance. But mate, you're 100% right. If you work for an organisation, say you worked for Amazon or something, you have to go along with their beliefs, their ethos as a company, their DNA. So, if you worked for Amazon and you thought that you should pay tax, then you should be fired, because clearly Amazon don't believe that. But you have to. You're right. It's not about his beliefs. It's about the ethics and the morals of the Australian Rugby Football Union as a whole. And if he doesn't fall in line with that, he's got to expect to be punished.
Yeah, but I don't think that there can be. He's got to be given another chance. I think he will. I think they're going to go, it's too important. Australia have been pretty poor in recent times, and he's a key part of that team. And I'd be very interested to know what the rest of the team thinks.
Well, especially as Pocock is such a sort of pro-gay campaigner, there must be some animosity there. But this is probably going to get me.
The players are not going to say he's too important to us, we're going to pretend it's okay. They're going to say, that it's not. There are more important things than having your best fullback. You just have your second best fullback, who becomes your best because you haven't got the best anymore.
He is. So this, purely from a rugby perspective, I want him to play in the World Cup because I think he's an incredible player. From a sort of moral and personal perspective, I don't think he should be allowed to play, but I would want to see him there because I think he's an amazing rugby player. But I don't think you can get like the sale prop who got caught doing. And I made a joke about it earlier. I don't know his situation, so I'm not gonna. But he's been dealt with, and it's been, and there is a way back for him, and potentially there should be a way back for Folau. I don't think you should be punished for life, but he needs to now. The fact is, second time, he really needs to just do what he's told, and if he's not willing to do that, he should walk straight away.
I'm not sure that he should be. That there should be a way back. I agree with you. I'd like to see him play for the rugby, but I just think he's made it so clear that this is a belief of his that he feels strongly enough about that he's going to ignore, a direct request from his employer not to do exactly what he's just done. To say this is your last warning, it's not like he made a fatal mistake. It was an entirely intentional thing that went directly against the sort of requests of his employer, and I just think there's no place for it, and it should 100%. Yeah, people will say, what's it got to do with rugby, and it shouldn't be up to rugby to determine all this stuff.
Oh, it 100% should be.
But it should be because he is an
ambassador of the game.
Yeah, an ambassador of the game, and an ambassador of Australia, and he has responsibilities. Politicians can't go around doing that.
No, I mean,
regardless of what they think, and when they do, they get found out and they get fired. Yeah. So the same should apply here. And more importantly, though, what are Australian RFU going to do, in your opinion?
I think they will fire him. I think they'll sack him.
You think they'll do it, make a statement?
Yeah,
I think so. Watch this space, and guys, let us know what you think. Obviously, people have different opinions, so if you think that differently to us, or you agree with us, get in touch. Twitter @EnglandRugbyPod, Facebook, or you can email us englandrugbypod@gmail.com and let us know your thoughts. So yeah, moving on. It's a bit of a sour note. Is there anything positive we can end on?
What positive can we end on? Oh God, you caught me there. I don't know. What I can't think of anything. Well, how exciting the Premiership is. How exciting rugby is. How amazing this weekend is going to be watching the rugby.
Indeed. So the 3 games, we've obviously Woods one to watch this weekend, Newcastle against Leicester, but don't
Friday night
be shy about watching Bath against Gloucester or Northampton against Quins, because they're both pretty vital games as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great weekend for rugby. I'm looking forward to it.
It'll be a blast. Right, well, guys, on that note, I think we'll probably leave you to it because we've kept you for too long already. But we will be back next week with all of the latest news. We're trying to just get ourselves back into the regular Tuesday slot. So I think next week will be Wednesday if we can manage it, and then we'll try and be back on the Tuesday slots from then on. But yeah, reach out to us, rate us, review us on iTunes if you get the opportunity. It takes 5 minutes, really helps us out. Get in touch as well, let us know what you think, and if there's anything you would like us to cover. Obviously, there are no games at the moment, so your ideas, we have a few already, and we will be utilising them. But your ideas are really welcome at the moment, just to give us some ammunition for the week's episode.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think at the moment we're probably talking a lot broader rugby than just England, because it's a bit of a downtime in the England thing. But obviously, as the World Cup builds up, we are going to be just throwing up England rugby all over everyone.
Oh, everywhere. Right, guys, thanks for listening, and we'll catch you next week.